Hi there and welcome to JFall 2020. This is Jakarta EE 9 and beyond. I'm Ivar Grimstad, the Jakarta EE Developer Advocate at Eclipse Foundation. These are my contact details. You can find me on Twitter and LinkedIn and GitHub. I'm a member of the Java Community Executive Committee, the Jakarta EE Working Group. I work for the Eclipse Foundation. I'm active in Apache Software Foundation, as well as running a Java user group in Malmö in Sweden. And I'm also a Java champion. So these are the topics I'll be covering today. I'll give you some background on Jakarta EE and how we do the work there. Then I'll talk about Jakarta EE 9 and show you some demos of what's coming. And I'm talking a little bit about what's coming after Jakarta EE 9. So, Jakarta EE then. Where does it come from? Well, you probably remember that it was called Java EE and was run by Java Community Process within Oracle. And in 2016, Oracle decided to donate this to open source. And a open source foundation, Eclipse Foundation, was selected, and we created the EE4J project. So all the Java EE code from the JCP, all the specifications, all the tests, all the implementations came over from the Java community process over to Eclipse Foundation under the EE4J projects, which are used as a basis to produce the Jakarta EE specifications. So where did the name come from? Probably you remember the Apache Jakarta project. This was a collection project for all the Java projects at Apache Foundation. And when we were figuring out a name for Jakarta EE, we looked at this and asked the Apache Foundation if we could use the name, and we got it. So this is where Jakarta come from, and we added EE to make it more clear that it's Enterprise Edition. And the website is jakarta.ee. It's super simple to remember. So if you take anything away from this session, please remember this URL. It's jakarta.ee. Just type it into your browser right away, bookmark it, and this is where you go to find information about Jakarta EE. So Jakarta EE is all about specifications. And with specifications, we have a lot of them. So all of these are covered today in the Java EE 8 and also in the Jakarta EE 8, and these are how we're grouping them for Jakarta EE 9. You see that we've marked some of them gray at the bottom, and these are specifications that we won't develop any further. It's stable technology, it's been around for a long time, it's going to be around for a long time, but we don't see them developing very much further, so they will stay as they are. All the blue ones are developing and potentially being developed further in the future. You can also see that we've grouped them in the platform profile and the Jakarta EE web profile. And the web profile is a little bit more targeted to web applications and RESTful endpoints and that kind of things. And if you need the more enterprise stuff like the batch or connectors to all kinds of legacy systems, then the full profile is probably the way to go. The specifications at Jakarta EE are open. And with open specifications, we mean that we have an open Jakarta EE specification process. What we want to do there is a code-first approach. And that means that we don't want to sit there and specify things that we don't know work yet. So we want to have some working implementations out there and then develop some specifications out of it. It's very collaborative. Everybody is welcome to join. It's totally free to join the Jakarta EE specification process and be a part of developing the specifications. Everything is open source. The documents and TCKs are now open source, and this is the significant change from how it used to be. Everybody can access the TCK. We also want to have one or more compatible implementations. So we remove the concept of reference implementation, so there are no special implementations here. You remember from Java EE that Glassfish had kind of a special position because it was the reference implementation of Jakarta EE. But now we have one or more compatible implementations, and whoever makes it first is the one that we certify first with. We also have the concept of self-certification, and that is kind of a consequence that the TCKs are open source. So everybody can access this, run the TCK on their product, and then they can claim certification, but they have to make the results public. So it's very transparent. but you don't have to submit your stuff to someone to run the tests for you. You can do it yourself and then publish the results. The Jakarta EE specification process is an extension of the Eclipse development process, and it's very similar to what we used to have in the JCP. You have a proposal for a specification, and we do a creation review that has to be signed off by the Specification Committee in order to be a Jakarta EE specification. Then you start developing this, and you can release one or more milestones, or none, if you go directly to a final release. But at least once a year, we need to have a progress review so we know that something is happening with the specification. And when the specification is ready to be released, we go through a release review with the specification process. And then you start over again with establishing a plan and going through a plan review, and you go into development again, just as any normal development project would do. So what is a specification then? A Jakarta EE specification is a specification document. It's some sort of API artifact, and it's a test suite, the test compatibility kit. And that is a test suite to test that an implementation actually implements the API that is specified by the specification document. And all of this together with a compatible implementation or more will be used to create a final specification. So you cannot release a final specification before you actually proven that it's implementable and you have one or more compatible implementations. This is exactly as it was in the JCP, but we think we have a little bit more open and transparent process here. So compatible implementations there then. We have a lot of them, and you see the usual implementations here you're used to from before. We have the Glassfish, the OpenLiberty, Red Hat, and Fujitsu, Pyara, Tmacsoft, Wildfly, and also a couple of new ones like Primeton and Apusik, which is pretty cool that we have some new players on the market. And there are more coming. And everything, all of this you can find on jakarta.ee/compatibility. Let's shift gear and go over to Jakarta EE9. Jakarta EE9 is actually available now. It's available as alphas, betas, milestones, release candidates, you name it. You can find it out there. And what's better than showing it in actual code? So let's go to a demo. And what I will do in this demo is I will create a simple servlet application, and I will run it on Tomcat and Jetty with Jakarta EE9. And this may come as a surprise to you, because when you talk about Jakarta EE9, you probably talk about WebSphere and WebLogic and that kind of full application servers. But you need to remember that all the individual specifications are very widely used, and an example of that is the servlet specification, which Tomcat and Jetty implements. So let's go to the code and look at how it looks. So you can see in my POM here that I'm using the 9 release candidate 2. There is actually a release candidate 3 as well out there, but in this example I'm using the 2. One thing also to note is that Jakarta EE9 requires Java SE8, and the APIs are compiled to Java SE8 level. The tests of the TCK are running on Java SE8, but that doesn't mean that you can run it on newer versions. And both Tomcat and Jetty actually runs on 15, and I'm compiling this application on 15. So you see, just read your manufacturer's documentation and see whatever they support, and then you can go on whatever Java version that is. So go and look at the code, and you're probably super familiar with this. It's a insanely simple servlet. What's notable here is that I'm using the Jakarta namespace. So you can see here that the Jakarta servlet has been converted, and I'm using the Jakarta servlet namespace. The servlet is just simple at the hello context, and it's saying Jakarta EE9. And here you can see I'm using some of the newer features in Java with the text blocks just for fun. So if I build this one, and then I'll just deploy it to Tomcat and Jetty and just prove to you that it's actually working. So it should be building fairly quickly. And as you can see, it's here on the servlet target. I have this servlet war here. So I'll just go into my command prompt, and here you can see I have tomcat milestone 7 running. There are newer milestones out there, but this is the one I had installed here. So let's just copy this servlet war into the webapps folder here, and let it deploy there. And at the same time, I'll copy it into my Jetty, which is Jetty 11 here. And this is an alpha. I think they have some newer as well, but just check their website and see whatever they have. And I'll copy the servlet war in here as well. So there we go, and it deploys fairly quickly. So let's go to the browser and see how it looks. So here you can see I have the Tomcat M7 instance running. So if I now navigate to the servlet hello, it should say hello from servlet 5. And this is the greeting I had in the code. The same thing with the Jetty. I'll just refresh here, and you can see the servlet application is here. So I can navigate to servlet hello, and it says greeting for servlet 5. So you can see servlet 5 is already supported by Jetty and Tomcat. So you can start using it if you're using these servers. And there are more. As I mentioned, Eclipse Glassfish is coming in version 6, which will support the full and web profile. I showed you Tomcat and Jetty. You also have Payara, Open Liberty, Tommy, Wildfly, Piranha, etc. And you have more. And if you want to get on this list and show that you're supporting the Jakarta namespace, if your app does it, if you have a cake with the Jakarta namespace on it, or if you have an application server, tweet Embrace Jakarta, hashtag Embrace Jakarta, and we'll put it on some list somewhere. And we'll make sure to make the world know about it when we release Jakarta EE9. So the Jakarta EE9 then, there are 3 barriers or pillars that we are focusing on, and that is lower entry barriers, platform for innovation, and easy migration. Let's go in here and look at how this is. So the lower entry barriers is what we're, my animations are going a little fast here, but no matter. So the lower entry barriers mean that we want to remove things that aren't that widely used, and that's all the grayed out things, and we're kind of pruning old stuff that aren't used anymore. So we're removing a lot of Corba stuff. That is to make it easier for new implementers to join the party, because most of the old vendors or the existing vendors already have this implemented and they don't have to do anything. But for a new vendor, having to implement these old things is just a hassle. So we remove stuff that aren't that widely used anymore. We want to make it as a platform for innovation, and that is kind of the namespace switch we're doing, because being on the Javax namespace had some limitations. We couldn't really evolve the APIs there. So by doing the namespace switch, we make the platform ready for innovation. So Jakarta EE9 will be more or less the same as Jakarta EE8. So we're not bringing any new things to the table here, but we're setting the foundation that now we can go. So this is the specification that is released as kind of the final step of the transfer from Oracle. We first had the Jakarta EE8 to validate the transfer, and then we're doing 9 to be ready to innovate further. And we also have the easy migration. And that is also why we don't add very much new things now. Most of the specs are actually not adding anything. And that is to make it sure that if you have an application running on the Javax namespace on Jakarta EE8 or Java EE8, you should be easy to migrate to Jakarta EE9. And if you encounter problems on that way, you know that it has to do with the namespace. So if we added a lot of functionality and switched a lot of the APIs, then you wouldn't know exactly what went wrong. And so that's also one of the important things, that why we're not doing any new innovations in EE9. We also have the Eclipse Transformer project that can do this work for you. And some of the vendors are actually using that in their implementations. So check out the Eclipse Transformer if you're interested in see how you can have some tooling to help you with the migration. So we talked about namespaces. And to make it super clear, what we're doing is that we're replacing the Javax namespace in the specifications with the Jakarta namespace. And what better way of showing that than using a demo? And in this example, I'll take a application that is a simple REST application, and I'm running it on Glassfish 5 on the Javax namespace on Jakarta EE8. Then I'll transform it to Jakarta EE9 and run it in Glassfish 6 as well as Apache Tommy to show that the namespace switch actually works across implementations. So let's go and look at that. In my code here, I have in my POM file says that this is Jakarta EE version 8. And if you look at the source code, you can see that it is. It's using the Javax namespace. It's a hello world application. It says hello to Jakarta EE8, and it's just printing Dude says hello to Jakarta EE8 as a JSON object. And the JSON object is just a simple one with a message and an email. I'm not using the email even. And then the application is just a simple Jakarta REST application. So if I do build this one or run it on Glassfish 5, so I'll have it running here, and I'll just add it, and I'll deploy it to this one. So let's look at that. I have it running behind me here. So Glassfish 5 is running. There is no applications on this URL yet. Let's see here. It's synchronized, so it's running, so we can say hello to Jakarta EE8. So this is super simple. And if I were to deploy this application to, for example, Glassfish 6 now, it would fail because Glassfish 6 wouldn't recognize the Javax namespace. So what I have to do in order to run it there is to convert it to Jakarta EE9. So let's do that. So I go into my POM, and this is the only dependency I have in my POM. It's a typical Jakarta EE application. So let's go here and change this one and use the release candidate 3. So I'm updating this. Just reload the project to get the dependencies right. And then I'll go into my application here, and you can see now it doesn't compile because the Javax namespace isn't supported anymore. So let's fix that. And as you see, the IDE helps you with most of it. Some of them are have conflicts because there are similar names, so you have to go through and be careful to choose the correct one. And as well as the application also has the Javax namespace. And just make sure you choose the correct one there as well. And as you see, the Pojo doesn't have any imports, so that's fine as it is. So let's take this one and deploy it to Glassfish 6. There you go. And I'll deploy it. There you go. And also, while it's deploying there, add it to Tommy. Do the same thing there. Add the artifact. And deploy it. You see it's working here. And it should be up and running pretty fast. And I forgot one thing. It's still saying Jakarta EE8. We cannot have it that way, so we have to change it to Jakarta EE9, right? So I'm changing it to Jakarta EE9. I'm gonna have to redeploy it to get the changes. And it should be up and running. So let's go to the browser and look at the Glassfish 6. And it's saying rest of hello. Oh, not yet. It's coming, I hope. Let's check the Tommy. It says hello to Jakarta EE8. Okay, so it hasn't redeployed yet. Let's go and republish it here. There you go. It's probably a little faster. Let's see when it's done. I think the Tommy should be up and running, and it says 9. So you see it's running on the Jakarta namespace, and there you go. It says Jakarta EE 9. So there you go. That was pretty easy. I was a little bit fast there running it on 2 at the same time, but as you see, what I did was change the version to version 9 and then fix the imports. So beyond Jakarta EE 9 then, what's coming after? The first thing we're going to do is we are going to release a point release of Jakarta EE 9, a 9.1 which has the APIs compiled towards Java SE 11 and requires Java SE 11 to be run when using the TCK. We want to look at the release cadence. So up until now, it's kind of been whenever we're done, and we're releasing when we're able to. But what we want to do is try to set a fixed release cadence like they do in Java SE. We don't want to go for a 6-month cadence. That's probably a little bit too fast for the Jakarta EE specifications. So what we're talking about is probably a year cadence. So if we can release Jakarta EE once a year, that would be a very good achievement. And please note that we're talking about the platform here. So all the individual specifications like the Jakarta REST or the servlet or CDI or bean relation, we want them to release as often as possible. And they can release many releases a year. And whenever the platform release is, that train is leaving the station, we see what's available, which versions are there, and we pick them up and release the platform as there. So when we're talking release cadence, it's the platform. It's not the individual specification. They can release whenever they want. We want to decouple the specifications to actually enable us to do this, and that is more a decoupling on the TCK level. So it will make sure that every specification project has control over their own TCK, can develop it as they want, and be able to release independently of the others. Right now we have a little bit too much dependencies between the specifications, so we're trying to decouple that in future releases. We want to have it predictable which Java SE versions we're going to support. Like in EE 9, we had to switch from 11 to 8 because of the work with the TCK. So we want to avoid that situation and have predictability on which Java SE versions we're releasing on. We probably won't match the versions numbers, but we will have some sort of strategy saying if it's the LTS versions or whatever we end up with. We want to make CDI more aligned across the specifications. There are some new APIs we're looking at. Jakarta NoSQL is there. They are developing this specification. It could be a potential for a future platform release as well. Jakarta MVC is on a roll. We just released 1.1 and we're releasing a 2.0 pretty soon after Jakarta EE 9, which will support the Jakarta namespace. We want to look at some common configuration mechanism, and now that microprofile is established as a working group, we're actually able to consume these specifications. So we can build for Jakarta EE 10, we may actually have microprofile config, for example, as a specification as part of the platform profile. Possible updates to other specifications. For security, it's been talked about adding OpenID OAuth to JSON Web Tokens and doing some updates to the annotations like roles allowed and etc. that we have today. And Jakarta security as it is today is a nice ground for developing more advanced security on top of it. So they will continue the work doing adding these features there. Concurrency is CDI alignment, adding some annotation support to make it easier to configure. For messaging, we're looking at some protocols, maybe AMQP, Kafka, MQTT, as well as continuing the CDI alignment that was started in previous releases. For persistence, we're looking at updates to JPQL to make it a little simpler to use. Maybe look at some common caching mechanisms like JCache. Multi-tenancy support is something that has come up as well. For Jakarta REST, they will continue the CDI alignment, maybe add some support for multi-part form data, and also the Java SE bootstrap mechanisms. And there are updates to most of the applications. There are traffic going on, maybe updates to Jakarta batch, mail, transactions, Jakarta faces. So if you're interested in one of these specifications or technologies, please join the mailing lists there and engage in the discussions going on there. So to sum up, Jakarta E9 is coming out. The release date is November 20th, so it's pretty soon. The key messages about Jakarta E9 is to lower the entry barriers, it's platform for innovation, and it's easy migration. And the important thing is the Javax namespace switch to Jakarta. And if you think it doesn't affect you, you're probably wrong, because it will. And even if you're on another framework like Spring, or if you're using if you're running anything on Tomcat or Jetty, for example, you will be affected when you upgrade to these versions, because you have to do the namespace switch. So it's just as good as getting along with it as soon as possible. The sources from this presentations are available. You can find information on Jakarta EE. You can find the source code for all the Eclipse EE4J projects on GitHub. Follow the Jakarta blogs, which is an aggregator for all the blogs around Jakarta. And you can actually add your own blog there if you want. It's a simple process by sending a pull request. It's documented on the webpage. And also, please note that every week I'm sending out a hashtag Jakarta EE, a short kind of status of what's going on in Jakarta community. So follow me on my blog as well. It's also published to Jakarta blogs and blogs at eclipse.org. And remember the Jakarta One Livestream coming up December 8th, 2020. And the website is jakarta1.org. Please register there. We have the program ready. And it's going to be an amazing story and celebration of the Jakarta E9 release. So that was what I had for today. Thank you very much for listening. And I think I'm open for some questions now. Thank you.
Good. Nice presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
I think there were quite a few questions coming up.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, let's start with the last one, probably. Maybe something that many people are wondering about. Was it not possible to maintain the old Javax namespace for Jakarta EE? Because it will produce a lot of code changes for many projects.
Yeah, it's a hassle. And believe me, we worked very hard to try to be able to keep the Javax namespace. And I guess that discussion to get that going is the reason why it took so long to get Jakarta E8 out. So the process from we started this transfer from the JCP over to Eclipse Foundation, it's mostly been about how to preserve the namespace. And at the end, it was just not possible. And so believe me, we wanted to do it, but then again, when we do this namespace switch, it kind of gives us a clean cut. So you will be, there are absolutely nothing tying us back to the old things. So in that way, it's kind of a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Allows you to really make new progress and new innovation later on.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, then I think two questions which were already kind of answered in chat. I don't know if you want to comment on those. The difference between Tomcat and Tom EE. Somebody posted a reference to a blog post.
Yeah, so I saw that it was answered in the comments that Tomcat implements parts of the servlet specification and some other specifications, while Tommy will be a fully certified, compatible Jakarta EE application server.
Yeah, exactly. And then another question on the difference between the JDK version and the Java EE version. I don't know if you saw that one.
So JDK version, that's the Java runtime or the Java standard edition you run on underneath. And and the Jakarta version is the Java EE or Enterprise version. So for Jakarta EE 9, we are basing ourselves on Java SE8 as the source for the APIs, and in future versions we will look at newer versions of Java. While Jakarta EE is based on Java EE8. That was the first version that we created at the Eclipse Foundation, was Jakarta EE8, which was exactly the same as Java EE8, only with the Jakarta artifact names in the maven compound.
Yeah, exactly. A question by Nick. I saw a nice one. He noticed that the Jakarta EE Maven artifacts, which were first released, were with the old Javax package, also with the old Javax namespace, while the newer ones use the Jakarta packages. And he kind of foresees a lot of trouble in converting from the old Maven artifacts to the new ones. Jakarta, what's the reasoning behind this? He really couldn't understand, I think.
Yeah, so with Java EE8, everything was JavaX something, both as artifacts in Maven, as well as the package names in the Java code. With Jakarta EE8, all the Maven artifacts were changed to Jakarta, but the packages remained JavaX. And that was the reason why we had to do it this way was kind of for finalizing the transfer from Oracle to Eclipse Foundation. We needed to have a version to prove that it was everything had been delivered. So we just changed the dependencies in Glassfish and ran the same TCK, and that's why we had to keep the Java packages the same. But as soon as we want to change anything in the APIs, we need to switch the namespace. And this was kind of the legal discussions that were going on forever.
Yeah, understood. Then I think that a good question that I think many Java developers are running into by Nick Stolberg: why are there artifacts with only one spec, and why are there umbrella artifacts with all the specs? As you often, if you combine frameworks into your application, you often run into the situation that you get both the Java EE.jar as provided, of course, but also your Jakarta WS jar inside your Maven artifact. You need to split them manually or exclude them manually.
Yeah, so if you are, I think it depends on how you set up your POM files. If the way I usually do it is that I use one dependency and I use either the web profile or the full profile, which is I guess what you mean by the umbrella artifacts. Yeah. And then I have all the Jakarta EE APIs available for me. And since it's an optional dependency, it doesn't add any size to my deliverable. But if I wanted to kind of cherry pick which specifications to kind of force my developers to only use the APIs that I wanted to offer them and maybe only give them the Jakarta REST APIs, then I could use only that artifact, but also as an optional dependency. So it actually wouldn't matter.
I think maybe that Nick is hinting at a situation where the Java EE artifact would just be kind of a in Maven terms, just a POM dependency, or just pulling in all the other dependencies instead of being a manually packaged complete.
Yeah, but that's kind of the difference. If you see these, for example, if you set up a Spring Boot application, you use some sort of actuator or some dependency in your POM.
Yeah.
And it will download the entire internet and packages in your jar.
Yeah.
But with Jakarta EE, it's provided, so it doesn't do that. It doesn't add anything to your application. That's provided by the runtime. So whether you run it on WebSphere or Wildfly or Glassfish or Tommy, the implementations are provided by these platforms. So it doesn't pull anything in like other frameworks do.
Yeah, let's see if there's any comments on that. Other questions which were there is also whether there is a reference application available. Ralph is asking that. I think it's actually the first question.
Yeah.
in chat. So
yeah, we used to have a Glassfish to be was the reference implementation, but after we moved to Jakarta, we don't want to have one implementation that is more special than others.
I think he's asking about a reference application. So kind
of so reference application. Yes, the cargo tracker is still there. It's an Eclipse project.
Yeah.
So you can go there and explore the cargo tracker, and it's open source, so everybody can use it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's mostly maintained by the Jakarta EE ambassadors.
Yeah. Okay, great. Then Martin van Rem is indicating that he also understood there are 2 versions to keep them binary compatible. That's probably referring to the previous question on the change first to just renaming the maven artifacts and then the packages.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Okay. I think that Martijn has van Bemt had a nice suggestion on a tomcat tool to migrate your classes to the Jakarta namespace. I don't know if you saw that or if you're familiar with that.
I'm not familiar with the Tomcat tool, but what I am familiar with is the Eclipse transformer. And I guess the Tomcat tool is probably based on that or influenced by it. That is a tool that takes your Javax applications and just fixes it bytecode so it's on Jakarta namespace. So okay. If you don't have the source code available, you can run it through the transformer and then run it on your application.
Yeah, that was my question exactly. So it's really at bytecode level that is changing your class files and then making sure that you, regardless if I have the source code or not, it will just. Okay, that's great. Then a question: what companies are now contributing to the Jakarta EE project?
Oh, there are lots of them. You should go to the Jakarta EE website and explore the members. The strategic members, the biggest companies are Oracle, IBM, Payara, Red Hat, Tommy Tribe, Fujitsu. I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. But I think that's the strategic members.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a bunch of participating members as well. So there are lots of them, and you can find them all on the Jakarta.ee webpage.
And that's I think I hear one name clearly missing. That's of course Oracle.
Yeah, I think yeah.
Is there anything holding us back from creating Jakarta EE 9 projects in Java 15? And will they also run on JDK 15?
Like I showed you, the servlet demo runs on 15. It depends on the implementations, really. So you can, but I know for sure that Glassfish will have to run on 8 as it is now. But we're planning on a 9.1 release of Jakarta EE, which will require Java 11 source level. So at least in a couple of months, you will be able to run it on Java 11. Okay. But I think that Wildfly and OpenLiberty runs on newer versions.
Okay, that's great. You hinted in the presentation at some alignment changes for CDI. What do you see coming up?
So there are some specifications that are still using their own kind of injection mechanisms, like in Jakarta REST you have still have some at resource annotations and that kind of thing. So we want to make it all CDI. Mm-hmm. So cleaning up that thing.
Yeah.
Also, some of the specifications are using an old style of initializing things, like the executor service in concurrency. So these kind of things. We're also looking at a CDI Lite version, which is being discussed on the mailing list now. And this is to make it easier to do ahead of time compilations and be able to compile to native.
But the whole Quarkus.
Yeah, like Quarkus.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's see if we have any other questions. I think we managed to discuss most of them. Well, we're also through our time, so I'd like to thank you for the presentation.
I saw one question. It is IntelliJ I'm using in this. The NetBeans configuration files are there because sometimes I run the demos with NetBeans as well. So I use both.
Okay, very nice. So thank you for the presentation. Audience, thank you for your attention, and I hope you have a great JFall.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.